sat in stunned silence today as Donald Trump delivered one of the most revealing speeches of his presidency. He admitted what he's been doing all along. He believes the military is his personal force. He believes rules of war are politically correct obstacles to be discarded. And he believes he can use American power however he wants. This wasn't subtle. He said it directly to the troops. But before the big admission, Trump opened the way he always does, with personal grievances.
The first time I won, but they say I didn't win the popular vote. I did. I won it by a lot, but they say I didn't. So every time they'd introduce Donald Trump, who didn't win the popular vote, but he, whatever. I said, I don't ever want that to happen again. But we did. We won everything. And this is
how Trump views the military. Remember when he hosted the Stanley Cup champions at the White House? He looked at how big and strong they were and said, "You're so big, but I have the United States military." That's the mindset. The military exists as a physical manifestation of his power. It backs up his personal might. It compensates for his insecurities. So when he talks to troops about how he really won and how people who didn't give him credit will pay, this is what's going through his head. You're going to be the ones to make that happen. Then he attacked Roy Cooper, the former governor of North Carolina.
But we want to keep this area safe, and we can't do that without the leaders, and your ex-governor is not one of them. It would be a disaster if he got in. And one of the things that I just mentioned and you saw the monster that killed an innocent young Ukrainian girl a couple of months ago, slitting her throat from behind. And this was the governor, that allowed this man to get out and to do that. We don't do that. We don't do that. Everybody knew he was trouble. Many, many crimes. One of the worst pasts I've ever seen. And she sat down. She had her throat slit. And that's not going to happen with Michael Whatley, that I can tell you. So I just want to tell you it's very important, because our military has to be protected. Our people have to be protected. And they will decimate our military. Every time you come in as a Republican, and a lot of Republicans, they come in, they don't do anything about it. I do beyond what anyone's ever done, not even close.
The irony is that Trump was the one who denied disaster relief to North Carolina in his first term. And now Kristi Noem is holding billions in FEMA funds hostage because of incompetence. But incompetence serving the administration's interests is still on brand. This government exists solely for Trump and his allies. Then, standing before the troops, Trump promoted the Melania movie. Just free.
She did a movie. It's the hottest thing you've ever. It's crazy. Congratulations, by the way. Very good. You know who loves that movie? The ladies. They go see it 3-4 times. That's what I heard. They go.
Let me summarize what the President of the United States said to our military. He bragged about winning the popular vote in an election. He lost the popular vote. He lied about never losing an election. He attacked a former governor. He promoted his wife's documentary. Seems like important military business. But then came the real admission. Trump talked about the politically correct way we used to fight wars, and the troops sat in silence.
We ended the scourge of political correctness in our military. We renamed the Department of Defense to the Department of War. Think of it, we won World War I. We won everything. World War II, and everything before, during, and a little bit after, except we fought a little bit differently. We fought to be politically correct. We were a politically correct force with the presidents. But now we have a real force, and you see that with what we did in Iran with the B-2 bombers. A lot of you were involved in that. And what we did recently in Venezuela, nobody ever saw anything like that happen.
This is the most important admission Trump could make, and I want to explain why. The politically correct rules he's mocking aren't some recent invention. They're the rules of war established after World War II, after we dropped nuclear bombs on Japan, after we carpet-bombed Berlin, after the world witnessed what happens when there are no limits on warfare. The international community decided that maybe after all that horror, we should establish guidelines for how wars are fought. Rules against targeting civilians, rules against torture, rules against collective punishment. Trump is saying we don't do that anymore. Think about what that means. Trump views American military might as solely his own. He said that directly. And he believes he's not governed by any rules of war. His own morality guides him and his foreign policy, nothing else. This is the same administration where Pete Hegseth talks about maximum lethality and removing politically correct restraints from the military. These aren't abstract policy positions. They're announcements that war crimes are back on the table. And if he doesn't believe in rules of war on the world stage, what about at home? This is a president currently considering putting ICE or troops at polling locations. A president who uses federal agents against American cities. A president who views the military as his personal enforcement arm. When he says, we don't fight politically correct anymore, that applies domestically too. He was talking about elections he won, then immediately pivoted to how the military will fight however he wants. That's not an accident. That's the connection in his mind. The military is his, the government is his, the whole power of the United States is his alone. That's why it's so important that Congress reclaim Article 1 powers. They've started on tariffs. They need to continue, because if they don't, Trump will keep acting unilaterally. And this gets more dangerous as Trump becomes more politically, physically, and mentally insecure. His response to insecurity is always to reach for more power. And he's already said the military is how he sees his power manifesting. Meanwhile, at the Munich Security Conference, American leaders who actually understand how alliances work are trying to reassure the world. AOC made an important point about the underlying conditions that enabled Trump.
Yes, that's absolutely right. I think one of the connections and relationships that is under discussed, particularly in the security space, is the fact that I believe we're seeing in across economy around the world, including the United States, that extreme levels of income inequality lead to social instability and drives, in a sense, in authoritarianism, right-wing populism, and very dangerous domestic internal politics. And that is a direct outcome of not just income inequality, but the failure of democracies over decades to deliver. The failure to deliver higher wages, the failure to rein in corporations. The point was just made about antitrust. In the United States, antitrust is such a foundational bedrock value, not just because the ascent of monopolies create the abuse of power in corporations and market power, but there is a level of market concentration and corporate consolidation where a massive company can get so big that its consolidated power can rival that of nation states. In democracies, we have elected leaders, and in massive corporations that then begin to consume the public sector, gobble up the spending, they start to call the shots. And we're starting to see this with some of the billionaire class throwing their weight around in domestic politics and in global politics as well. So it is of utmost urgent priority that we get our economic houses in order and deliver material gains for the working class, or else we will fall to a more isolated world governed by authoritarians that also do not deliver to working people.
Defeating Trump isn't just about beating him in elections. Trump is a symptom, not the whole sickness. The economic anxiety, the broken institutions, the inequality, those conditions allowed him to take hold. That's the kind of clear-eyed analysis world leaders need to hear. America has to acknowledge why this happened if we're going to prevent it from happening again. Gavin Newsom was also at Munich, calling out Trump on the world stage.
Donald Trump is temporary. He'll be gone in 3 years. California is a stable and reliable partner in this space. And it's important for folks to understand the temporary nature of this current administration in relationship to the issue of climate change and climate policy.
At least some American leaders aren't embarrassing us internationally. At least someone is telling the world that Trump doesn't represent all of us. Here's what Trump's Fort Bragg speech reveals. First, he sees the military as his personal tool, not the nation's military, his, to be used for his grievances, his enemies, his purposes. Second, he's rejecting international rules of war. The politically correct constraints he's mocking are the Geneva Conventions and related international law. He's announcing those don't apply to him. Third, he can't separate personal grievances from official duties. A speech to troops becomes about his election victories, his critics, his wife's movie. Everything is about him. Fourth, the silence is telling. Troops sat stunned. They weren't cheering. They weren't rah-rah. They were silent. Even they recognize something is wrong. Here's what to watch going forward. Watch military deployment decisions. If Trump believes rules don't apply, expect more aggressive uses of military power both abroad and at home. Watch Congress's response. The Article 1 powers exist for a reason. If Congress doesn't reclaim them, Trump will keep expanding executive authority. Watch ICE at polling locations. He's already considering it. If he views domestic enforcement the same way he views foreign warfare, expect escalation. Watch the Munich Security Conference aftermath. World leaders are making decisions about whether they can rely on America. Those decisions have long-term consequences. Trump told the troops that politically correct warfare is over, that America will fight however he wants, that the military is his. The troops sat in silence. They heard what he said. We should too. Subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell. We're tracking every admission, every power grab, every break from law and norms. Like this video. Drop a comment with your thoughts on Trump's Fort Bragg speech. At Fort Bragg sat in stunned silence today as Donald Trump delivered one of the most revealing speeches of his presidency. He admitted what he's been doing all along. He believes the military is his personal force. He believes rules of war are politically correct obstacles to be discarded.